The air in the Driftwood Tavern hung thick with the mingled scents of a dozen species. The musky pheromones of the Vorthax, the ozone tang of the Makani, and beneath it all, the faint iron scent of spilled blood that no amount of cleaning could fully erase. At the center table, the debate had been raging for 3 standard hours, growing louder with each round of drinks. A massive Vorthax warrior, his chitinous armor clicking with each movement, slammed his primary claws against the reinforced table. The Zerethian Bloodfang remains the undisputed apex predator of the Orion arm, he declared, mandibles clicking for emphasis. Its venom can melt through durasteel plating in under 30 seconds. Across from him, a lithe Zelnari female shimmered in annoyance, her bioluminescent markings pulsing a deeper blue. "Your Bloodfang is a mindless beast," she countered, her voice like liquid nitrogen. "The Nixian Shadowstalker hunts with precision. It can wait motionless for weeks before striking with perfect accuracy." In the corner booth, Lieutenant Mara Voss watched the debate with quiet amusement, her cybernetic left eye cycling through enhanced spectra as she observed the various life forms. Her partner, Elias Carter, leaned forward, the glow of the overhead lights catching the scars that crisscrossed his knuckles. "You're all missing the point," Elias interjected, his voice cutting through the argument like a vibroblade. The bar fell silent as all eyes turned toward the humans. Among the gathered species, humans were still newcomers to the galactic stage, their reputation oscillating between reckless upstarts and dangerous wildcards. The Vorthax turned his massive head, compound eyes reflecting Elias's image 100 times over. "And what wisdom does the soft-skinned primate have to share?" he rumbled, the challenge clear in his voice. Elias took a slow sip of his whiskey before answering. "Depends. Are we counting trained or wild ones?" The silence that followed was so complete Mara could hear the hum of the tavern's environmental systems. Then she spoke, her voice calm but carrying an edge that made several of the patrons unconsciously straighten in their seats. "Because if we're counting trained predators," she said, setting her glass down with deliberate precision, "then the answer is us." The Cuxillian trader at the next table hissed, his feather-like scales ruffling in agitation. "Arrogance. Your species barely has claws worth mentioning. No natural armor, and your bite force is laughable." Mara's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. 5 years ago, she'd been on New Carthage when the Krell Dominion attacked. She remembered the way the insectoid warriors had swarmed over colonies' outer defenses, their chitinous bodies glistening in the firelight. They'd expected the humans to break, to flee like prey animals. Instead, the colonists had fought back with a ferocity that shocked the galaxy. Mara had been part of the counterattack, part of the unit they called the Ghost Wolves. They hadn't just fought the Krell, they'd hunted them, used their own tactics against them, turned their strengths into weaknesses. The Krell had a name for that campaign. They called it the Howling War, because the humans had the audacity to announce their attacks with those strange, haunting vocalizations that carried to the battlefield like a promise of death. Mara pulled herself back to the present, meeting the Cuxillian's slit-pupiled gaze. "You're right," she said easily. "In the wild, with nothing but our bare hands, we're middling at best. But trained, armed, given a reason to fight." She leaned forward slightly. "Then we become something else entirely." Elias chuckled darkly beside her. "You ever hear about war dogs back on Earth? We bred them to be perfect hunters. Then we went and did the same thing to ourselves." The Zelnari's bioluminescent markings flickered in a pattern Mara's implant translated as skeptical amusement. "This is an entertaining theory," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "But without evidence." The Vorthax slammed his drink down. "Evidence. Yes, the human makes bold claims. Let us test them." He gestured to the hollow tank at the center of the tavern. "The Nexus has combat simulations. Let your human face the galaxy's greatest predators, if she dares." Mara felt a familiar adrenaline surge through her veins, the same one she felt 100 times before dropping into hostile territory. She exchanged a glance with Elias, who gave her an almost imperceptible nod. "Fine," Mara said, standing and rolling her shoulders. "But let's make it interesting. I'll take on your so-called apex predators. And when I win you all by the next round." The Cuxillian's crest flared in challenge. "And when you lose?" Mara's smile turned sharp. Then I admit humans are the weakest species in the bar. The crowd erupted into a cacophony of clicks, hisses, and cheers as they made their way to the simulation chamber. The tavern's owner, a grizzled old Makani with half his face replaced by cybernetics, activated the system with a series of commands entered through his neural interface. The simulation chamber was a circular room 20 meters across, its walls lined with holographic projectors and force field generators. Mara stepped into the center as the system initialized, rolling her neck and stretching her arms. The system would simulate weapons and injuries with painful accuracy, though no actual harm would come to the participants. The Vorthax input the first challenge, a Zerethian blood fawn. The air shimmered as the massive predator materialized before Mara, its 6 legs ending in razor-sharp claws, its segmented body covered in armored plates. Venom dripped from its mandibles, sizzling where it hit the floor. Mara was given a standard combat knife. No armor, no ranged weapons. The blood fawn charged. Mara didn't run. She'd faced worse during the Howling War. Instead, she moved laterally, keeping the beast turning, wearing it down. When it lunged, she feinted left before rolling right, her knife flashing out to score a shallow cut along its flank. The crowd murmured as the battle continued. The blood fawn was fast, but Mara was faster. She used the environment, ducking behind simulated rock formations, forcing the creature to waste energy. After 7 minutes of this dance, when the beast was panting and slowing, Mara made her move. She baited it into a charge, then at the last possible moment, sidestepped and drove her knife up through the soft tissue, beneath its jaw, twisting the blade to sever the neural cluster. The blood fawn collapsed, twitching, before dissolving into pixels. The tavern was silent. The Zelnari stepped forward next, programming in her Shadow Stalker. The creature appeared as little more than a distortion in the air, completely invisible to the naked eye. Mara was given the same knife. She closed her eyes, relying on her enhanced auditory implants to pick up the faintest sounds. The Shadow Stalker was good, nearly silent as it moved. But nothing was perfect. A faint scrape of claw on stone, the barest whisper displaced air. Mara spun and threw her knife in one fluid motion. The blade struck true, embedding itself in the creature's throat. The Shadow Stalker flickered into visibility as it died, its camouflage failing with its last breath. Now the murmurs in the crowd took on a different tone. The Cuxillian pushed forward, his feathers ruffled in agitation. "Fine," he hissed. "But no human can best one of us in single combat." The simulation reset, this time generating a Cuxillian hunter in its prime. The avian warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, his talons capable of rending steel, his reflexes honed by generations of predatory evolution. Mara cracked her knuckles. "Finally," she said, "a challenge." The fight was brutal. The Cuxillian was faster than her, stronger, with natural weapons that made every strike potentially lethal. Mara took hits that would have killed a lesser opponent, the pain simulations making each blow feel agonizingly real. But Mara had been trained by the best Earth had to offer. More importantly, she'd been forged in the fires of the Howling War, where failure meant death for entire colonies. She fought smart, letting the Cuxillian wear himself out, taking hits when necessary to create openings. When the avian warrior lunged for what he thought would be the killing blow, Mara did something unexpected. She let him. As his talons raked across her chest, she drove her knife up under his rib cage, piercing his primary heart. The simulation froze, then dissolved. Mara stood panting in the center of the chamber, her simulated wounds fading as the program reset. The tavern was utterly silent. The Vorthax was the first to move. Slowly, deliberately, he placed his primary claws against his thorax in the warrior's salute of his people. The Zelnari inclined her head, her bioluminescent markings flashing a pattern Mara's implant translated as worthy opponent. The Cuxillian stared at her for a long moment before speaking. "How?" he asked, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. "How can a species with no natural weapons, no armor become that?" Elias answered for her, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. "Because we're not just predators," he said. "We're the monsters who invented monsters. And then we trained them. Mara wiped the last of the simulated blood from her face and walked back to the bar. The drinks, as promised, were on the house that night, and though no one said it aloud, the message was clear. Humanity might have come late to the galactic stage, but they were no longer the underdogs. As they left the tavern hours later, Elias nudged Mara with his elbow. "Think they'll stop underestimating us now?" Mara glanced back at the assembled aliens, their expressions ranging from awe to newfound respect to, in some cases, barely concealed fear. She grinned, showing just a bit too many teeth. "Doubt it," she said. "Good."